It was a quiet morning in Noida, a city just outside New Delhi. On May 16, 2008, Dr. Rajesh and Dr. Nupur Talwar woke up expecting an ordinary day. Instead, they found every parent's worst nightmare. In their home, their 14-year-old daughter Aarushi was lying dead in her bed. Her throat had been slit with surgical precision. The room was neat, no signs of struggle, no sign of forced entry. The only thing missing was the family's live-in housekeeper, Hemraj. Within hours, police arrived. At first, they assumed the obvious. The servant had killed the girl and fled. The story seemed simple, tragic, and contained. But something about the scene didn't sit right. There was very little blood outside the bed. The apartment doors were locked from the inside, and neighbors had heard nothing during the night. The Talwars were devastated. They told police that Aarushi was their only child, a bright and affectionate teenager who loved photography and dance. Her birthday was just days away. The officers offered condolences, but quickly turned their attention to Hemraj, convinced he was the killer. That evening, the case dominated national headlines. Television anchors described it as a servant on the run. Photos of Aarushi filled every news screen. Reporters camped outside the Talwar residence, waiting for updates. But by the next morning, the entire narrative would collapse. A smell began to drift through the apartment building. Neighbors followed it to the Talwars' rooftop terrace. There, behind a locked door, they found something police had missed. Another body. It was Hemraj, the housekeeper they believed had escaped. He had been murdered too. His throat was cut the same way as Aarushi's. The discovery changed everything. The killer wasn't missing. He was dead. And whoever had done this had been inside the house all along. The discovery of Hemraj's body turned the investigation upside down. Just a day earlier, police were sure he was the killer. Now he was another victim, lying on the rooftop, his throat slashed, blood soaking the floor beneath him. The door to the terrace had been locked from the inside. That detail would haunt the case for years to come. Officers were embarrassed. How had they missed a second body in the same house? Forensic teams rushed back, but by then, the scene was already contaminated. Dozens of officers, journalists, and curious onlookers had trampled through the rooms. Evidence that could have answered everything, fingerprints, footprints, fibers, was now useless. Investigators tried to rebuild the timeline. Aarushi was last seen alive around 9:30 p.m. the night before. Her parents said they had dinner, watched TV, and went to bed. By morning, both Aarushi and Hemraj were dead. The murders appeared connected, but the question was how. Police searched for clues but found contradictions everywhere. There were no signs of forced entry. Valuables were untouched. And the pattern of the wounds suggested the killer knew exactly what they were doing: methodical, controlled, and personal. Theories began to multiply. Maybe someone from outside had climbed in through the balcony. Maybe it was a robbery gone wrong. Or maybe, as some officers quietly whispered, the killer was someone inside the house. The media smelled blood. By that evening, headlines shifted from "Servant Murders Teen" to "Family Secrets in Noida Murder." Cameras surrounded the Talwar home. Every move of the grieving parents was recorded and analyzed on live TV. What began as a tragedy was quickly turning into a public spectacle. And with the investigation collapsing under pressure, the search for truth was about to get messy. In the days after the two bodies were found, the media's attention shifted away from the crime scene and toward the family itself. The Talwars were everything you'd expect from a successful, middle-class household. Both parents were respected dentists with their own clinic. Their daughter Aarushi was bright, curious, and loved by friends. On the surface, it was the picture of a perfect Indian family, but perfection, it seemed, was about to be torn apart. As the police struggled with the investigation, whispers began to spread. Some officers started suggesting that the crime might have been an inside job. They pointed out that the house was locked from within, there were no signs of forced entry, and the killings were done with surgical precision, something a doctor might be capable of. Then came a theory that would change the case forever. Investigators leaked a story to the press. They claimed the parents had discovered Aarushi in a compromising situation with the housekeeper, Hemraj, and killed them both in a fit of rage. There was no evidence, no witness, no forensic proof, but the story exploded across television screens. News anchors dissected the family's private life, speculating about motives, relationships, and morality. Tabloids branded it an honor killing overnight. The grieving parents became suspects. Dr. Rajesh Talwar was interrogated for hours. His wife, Nupur, tried to defend him on national TV, insisting that the police were spreading lies to cover their own mistakes. But the damage was done. Public opinion had already turned against them. Behind closed doors, the Talwars faced the unimaginable. They had lost their daughter, and now the world believed they were the ones who killed her. While reporters fought for new headlines, the actual investigation was collapsing. Crucial evidence had been mishandled, timelines confused, and the police seemed more interested in television cameras than truth. The tragedy was no longer just about Aarushi's death. It was about a family being torn apart by rumor, incompetence, and suspicion. Long before the case reached a courtroom, it had already been tried in the media. Every night, television anchors turned the murder of Aarushi Talwar into a national soap opera. Headlines screamed across screens. Parents killed daughter in honor rage. Doctor couple's dark secret. Noida's house of horror. Reporters camped outside the Talwar home day and night, shouting questions through the gate, filming the family's every move, even their tears. What began as reporting turned into entertainment. Networks recreated fake crime scenes with actors, dramatizing theories as if they were fact. Each channel had its own version of the truth. Some claimed Aarushi was involved with the housekeeper. Others suggested her parents were covering up an affair. None of it was backed by real evidence. The public was captivated. Social media exploded with opinions. Strangers debated the family's guilt as if they knew them personally. Overnight, the Talwars went from respected doctors to villains of a national scandal. Meanwhile, the police investigation was falling apart. Key evidence, blood samples, fingerprints, even the suspected murder weapon, was mishandled or lost. Instead of admitting mistakes, authorities seemed eager to feed the media frenzy. Leaks became headlines, and headlines became pressure on investigators to prove the parents guilty. Through it all, the Talwars maintained their innocence. They spoke to reporters, pleaded for fairness, and demanded that the real killer be found. But no one was listening. The louder the cameras got, the smaller their voices became. In India, people began calling it the first televised murder case. It wasn't just about solving a crime anymore. It was about public spectacle, ratings, and outrage. And as the truth got buried under sensational headlines, justice for Aarushi slipped further away. By mid-2008, the Noida police had lost control of the case. Evidence was destroyed, timelines were confused, and public trust had evaporated. That's when India's top investigative agency, the Central Bureau of Investigation, or CBI, stepped in. At first, the nation celebrated. People believed that with the CBI involved, the truth would finally come out. But what followed only deepened the mystery. The first CBI team, led by Officer Arun Kumar, carefully re-examined the case. They found major flaws in the police theory. The alleged honor killing had no physical evidence to support it. Instead, they discovered signs that more than one person could have been involved, and that the real killer might have entered from outside. Their findings cleared the Talwars of suspicion. In 2009, the CBI told the court there wasn't enough evidence to charge the parents. For a moment, it looked like justice might finally turn their way. But then something unexpected happened. A new CBI team was assigned, and they took the investigation in the opposite direction. Ignoring the earlier findings, they revived the same theory that the Talwars were guilty. They argued that only someone inside the house could have committed both murders and locked the doors afterward. This second team's approach shocked observers. Critical forensic samples were gone. DNA tests were inconclusive. The murder weapon was never found. Yet the new team claimed they had enough circumstantial evidence to prosecute the parents anyway. The Talwars, once hopeful, found themselves back at square one, accused of murdering their own daughter. Public opinion reignited. News anchors repeated the same old stories, and the investigation that was supposed to bring clarity now stood as proof of something else. That even the country's top agency could be swayed by pressure and chaos. The case was officially reopened. The parents would now face trial for double murder. A case built on contradictions, missing evidence, and a nation's obsession with finding someone to blame. By 2013, 5 years after Aarushi's death, the case had become one of the most publicized trials in India's history. Dr. Rajesh and Dr. Nupur Talwar, once respected doctors, now branded murderers, stood before the court accused of killing their only child and their housekeeper, Hemraj. The courtroom was packed with reporters. Every hearing was headline news. The prosecution built its case on a foundation of speculation. They argued that Aarushi was killed in a fit of rage after her parents allegedly found her in an improper situation with Hemraj. No eyewitnesses, no fingerprints, no DNA match. The supposed murder weapon, a golf club or surgical scalpel, was never recovered. Yet the state painted a vivid story. 2 murders committed to protect the family's honor, carried out in silence behind locked doors. The defense tore into the inconsistencies. They showed how police contaminated the crime scene, how key evidence had gone missing, and how 2 different CBI teams had reached opposite conclusions. They argued there was no proof, only assumptions twisted into narrative. Still, the tide of public opinion was against them. For years, the media had convinced the nation that the Talwars were guilty. And in November 2013, the verdict came down. Both Rajesh and Nupur Talwar were found guilty of double murder and sentenced to life in prison. The courtroom fell silent. Outside, cameras flashed. Some viewers celebrated the decision, calling it justice for Aarushi. Others saw it as a tragedy. Parents condemned for a crime the state could never truly prove. Behind bars, the Talwars maintained their innocence. They continued their dental work for inmates in prison, waiting for an appeal that might finally clear their names. For the media, the case had come full circle, a neat ending to a story they had written years earlier. But for those who looked closer, the question still hung in the air. If not the Talwars, then who killed Aarushi and Hemraj? 4 years after the guilty verdict, the story of Aarushi Talwar took another dramatic turn. In October 2017, the Allahabad High Court announced its decision on the Talwars' appeal. After re-examining the evidence, the judges delivered a scathing critique of the original investigation. They said the prosecution's case was built on assumptions and suspicion, not on fact. The verdict read, "Circumstantial evidence cannot replace proof. The chain of evidence in this case is incomplete." With that, Dr. Rajesh and Dr. Nupur Talwar were acquitted and released after spending nearly 4 years in prison. When they walked out of jail, the media that once branded them killers suddenly turned silent. There were no dramatic headlines, no breaking news countdowns, just a quiet acknowledgement that the system had failed them. The High Court's ruling exposed deep flaws in India's criminal justice process. Forensic evidence had been mishandled from day one. Investigators changed theories mid-case, and the pressure to solve a high-profile murder led to a rush for closure rather than truth. But even with their freedom restored, the Talwars' lives were never the same. Their clinic had closed, their reputations destroyed, and most painfully, their daughter's real killer had never been found. In interviews after their release, both parents spoke softly, without anger. Rajesh said, "We lost everything, our child, our profession, our peace, but we still want justice for Aarushi." The mystery remained unsolved. No new suspects were ever charged. And for India, the case became a haunting reminder that sometimes the pursuit of justice can become its own tragedy. The murder of Aarushi Talwar remains one of the most haunting mysteries in India's modern history. A 14-year-old girl, 2 deaths, a family destroyed, and still no answers. What began as a tragic crime soon became a mirror of a broken system. Police incompetence, media sensationalism, and a nation's obsession with assigning blame. In the rush to find a villain, evidence was lost, reputations were ruined, and truth slipped through the cracks. The case raised uncomfortable questions. How easily can a grieving family become the accused? How quickly can public opinion turn into judgment? Long before a court ever does? And when institutions meant to protect us fail, what does justice really mean? For the Talwars, freedom came too late. They spent years behind bars, branded as monsters for a crime no one could prove. They were cleared, but never vindicated. Their daughter was gone, their lives shattered, and the real killer still out there, perhaps watching as the country moved on. For India, the case became a warning. It showed how fragile truth can be in a storm of media noise and public outrage, how evidence can vanish faster than headlines, and how justice, when built on pressure instead of proof, can destroy the innocent while protecting the guilty. More than a decade later, people still ask the same question: who killed Aarushi Talwar? But perhaps the deeper question is, who killed justice for her? Do you think justice was ever truly served in this case? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to see more true crime stories like this, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss the next case.